You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and I have to start with the Jets hiring Robert Sala to be their next head coach. He got a 5-year deal to lead this team going forward. And before I get into anything, I want to say that this is a really good hire. I like Robert Sala. I like him a lot. He was the 5th guy on my list. My top 5 was Eric Bieniemy, Lincoln Riley, Dabo Swinney, Brian Daboll, and Robert Sala. So yes, there were people I would have preferred, but the Jets went offense with Adam Gase. It failed tremendously. From Bill Parcells on, they have hired defensive coaches. That is when they have been the most successful. Before Gase, the last offensive coach they hired was Rich Kotite, a guy who went 4-28 in his 2 years with the Jets. So the Jets historically have had better luck on defense. That doesn't mean all offensive guys are bad, it just means that they've had better luck with defensive guys. Parcells, Herm Edwards, Rex Ryan. For whatever reason, they seem to do better with defensive guys. I mean, it makes sense. You hire a supposed offensive guru in Adam Gase who can't do anything else, isn't a fiery, rah-rah guy on the sidelines, not exactly the best leader of men in the world. That fails tremendously, so you hire his polar opposite. The big thing that people have said about Robert Sala is that he is the anti-Adam Gase. That is 100% true. I mean, watch Sala on the sidelines. This guy's always celebrating, always hugging his players. Very good leader. A lot of players have raved about him. Richard Sherman, Joe Staley, a bunch of former 49ers. Quinnen Williams and Mekhi Becton, obviously the 2 big building blocks on the Jets, were really excited about this hire. It makes sense. I like this move. The 49ers defense the last 2 years has been really, really good. 2 years ago, they were in the Super Bowl. They came very close to beating the Chiefs. I mean, you look at the team stats on defense for 2019, the Niners are in the top 10 of every major defensive category. Now, this past year, they took a little bit of a step back, but they're in the top 15 in most major defensive categories. And that's with Nick Bosa and Dee Ford getting hurt early. Robert Sala is going to be a really good Jets head coach. I like this hire a lot. It makes a ton of sense. And you've got to give Joe Douglas a ton of credit for getting his top guy. All throughout this week, you heard that Sala was the guy the Jets wanted. He met with Jets brass for the second time earlier this week. They let him leave the building. A lot of people were saying, "Oh, what are you doing? You can't let him leave the building, blah, blah, blah." Hey, it worked. Joe Douglas got his top guy. His A1 choice. And the good thing about this is there's no prior connection between Douglas and Sala. This isn't like if Douglas had hired Doug Peterson, who, by the way, never got an interview with the Jets, which I am stunned about. I thought for sure Peterson was going to end up being the favorite for the Jets job. I was 100% wrong. He didn't even get an interview. Robert Sala, for a while, has been the Jets' A1 guy. That's despite the fact that Douglas and Sala have never worked together. There is no pre-existing relationship. So, what happened was, Sala wowed everyone in the Zoom meeting. Then he got flown to East Rutherford, toured the facilities, and just agreed to a 5-year contract to be the next Jets head coach. Sala didn't have any ins with anyone. This wasn't a buddy-buddy type hire. Sala got this job because of his merits and his vision for this team going forward. This guy has done really good things as Niners defensive coordinator, and I think he's going to do really good things as Jets head coach. But having said that, I'm not as excited as most Jets fans are about this hire. And I don't begrudge the Jets fans who are going nuts about this hire for going nuts. Sala's a very easy guy to get behind. Master motivator. You just saw him in the Super Bowl. Hell, you saw him in week 2 wipe the floor with the Jets. And he's not going to pay attention to just the defense. He's going to pay attention to the offense, special teams, everything. He's a quote-unquote CEO type head coach, which is what the Jets really wanted. They wanted a leader. They wanted someone who it's very easy to get behind. And that's what the fans are doing here. They're getting behind a guy who's very easy to get behind. And I'm behind this hire. I like it. But I'd be lying to you if I said I didn't have any concerns. The biggest thing is, what does this mean for the offense going forward? Not quarterback going forward. I'll get to that in a bit. But what does this mean for the offense in the future? We know that Mike LaFleur, the Niners passing game coordinator, is going to be the Jets offensive coordinator. Despite the fact that he has no play calling experience in the NFL. In fact, the last time this guy called plays or was in a position to call plays was when he was the offensive coordinator for the 2013 Davidson Wildcats. That lack of NFL offensive play calling experience concerns me. Now, I'm not knocking LaFleur. He's Matt LaFleur's brother. As his passing game coordinator in 2019, Jimmy Garoppolo had a fantastic season. The best season of his career. The first season, he played all 16 games, completed 69% of his passes, almost threw for 4,000 yards. LaFleur strikes me as a smart guy. And let's say he ends up being a really smart guy. Let's say whoever's under center for the Jets next year has a career season. More likely than not, you're going to end up losing LaFleur. Maybe not after next season, but maybe the season after, maybe the season after that. It's a great problem to have. I understand that. And it's not a knock on LaFleur. It's more a knock on why didn't the Jets go with an offensive guy? Why didn't they go with Bieniemy? Why didn't they go with Dable? I can promise you that the majority of these head coaching vacancies are gonna go to offensive guys. Not guys who are gonna just focus on offense like Adam Gase. Not a guy who's gonna let his defensive coordinator call an all-out blitz in an obvious passing situation. But a guy with a background on offense, and a guy who's going to put a system in place that you're not going to have to worry about losing every offseason. If Mike LaFleur does great things with the Jets, he's gone. And then the question becomes, what's the next guy going to do? I've seen quarterbacks change systems a lot, and it doesn't work. I'd rather have a guy put an offense together that I know I'm going to have for the next 5 years, rather than a guy bring in a smart guy on offense. Mike LaFleur is a really smart guy, but every offseason I have to worry about losing him. Again, great problem to have. If Mike LaFleur is going to be interviewed by teams to be their next head coach after this coming season, that means that the Jets are doing something right on offense, which is something I haven't seen in a really, really long time. But while it's a great problem to have, there's no question that it is, it's an avoidable problem. And it's one that you could have addressed by going after a guy like Bieniemy or Dable. Everyone who I spoke to about this job agreed with me that Eric Bieniemy was the A1 guy for the Jets. But if he didn't fit Joe Douglas's vision, that's fine. Like I said, Douglas got his A1 guy. This isn't anything against Robert Sala personally. It's just more important to get the offense fleshed out. I mean, the reality is, with LaFleur coming in to run the offense, you've seen two guys predominantly linked to being the Jets' starter next year. Now, before I get into that, let me just say that I know things can change. We've got 2 months until free agency, 3 months until the draft, and 8 months until the season starts. I understand that. But as it stands right now, if you had to lay odds on who's going to be the starting quarterback for the Jets next year, Sam Darnold is the favorite, and Zach Wilson is the runner-up. The reason for that is LaFleur's going to establish a Shanahan-style offense. An offense with a lot of play-action bootlegs, very run-heavy. You remember Sam Darnold, his rookie year? That offense? That's the offense you're going to see next year. Because Jeremy Bates is in that same realm. Him and LaFleur have a very similar background. Bates worked for Mike Shanahan. LaFleur worked for Kyle Shanahan. The reality is, if I'm going to let Mike LaFleur or anyone make a decision on what the Jets should do at quarterback going forward, I want to know that this guy is going to be here long term. As critical as I've been of Joe Douglas, I know he's going to be here long term. I don't know that about LaFleur. LaFleur can leave after next season. And then you bring in an offensive coordinator who runs a completely different system, and then we're back to square one. If I'm going to let Mike LaFleur or anyone have a say in what the Jets should do going forward at quarterback, the most important position in sports, I want to know he's going to be here for the long haul. Again, this is nothing against Mike LaFleur. He's a smart guy. And if he leaves after next season to take a head coaching job, I won't begrudge him. But it creates a problem that was avoidable. Sam Darnold would enter his fourth offensive system in 5 years. You want to talk about the Jets not doing everything possible to support their quarterback? That's not doing everything possible to support their quarterback. If they were really all behind Sam Darnold, they would have hired an offensive head coach. Hell, they would have hired LaFleur as their head coach. Now, let me just say that they shouldn't be behind Sam Darnold. I don't like Sam Darnold. I want Sam Darnold gone. Nothing would make me happier than to see Sam Darnold be traded. I am done watching this guy play quarterback. Which is what made Adam Schefter's report on SportsCenter last night so disturbing. He said that Darnold's gonna open up the season next year as the Jets' starting quarterback. Again, a lot can change between now and opening day next year, but Schefter basically said outright that Sam Darnold is going to be the Jets starting quarterback in 2021. Now, I said in the Jets offseason preview that I don't begrudge people for still believing in Sam Darnold. It's a valid theory that if you put a better supporting cast around him, he'll turn into the quarterback that we all want him to. But do you think the Shanahan offense is right for him? I saw him run it his rookie year. This is what he did. Completed less than 58% of his passes, the lowest mark of his career, threw for under 3,000 yards, just 17 touchdowns, and threw 15 interceptions. The most interceptions he's ever thrown in a season. Oh, but Jacob, that was his rookie season. No. If the Shanahan offense is the perfect offense for Sam Darnold, he would have been able to run it regardless of if it was his first year in the league or his 20th year in the league. Hell, look at a guy like Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray lands in a great system in Arizona. An offense that fits his skill set perfectly. What did he do his rookie season? Completed over 64% of his passes for over 3,700 yards, 20 touchdowns, and only 12 interceptions. The rookie year argument is nonsense. If the system is right for the quarterback will succeed regardless of year. So you combine that with the fact that LaFleur may not be here after 1, 2, or 3 years, it boggles the mind how you'd let the Shanahan system impact your decision on what you should do at quarterback going forward. Here's a crazy idea. Get the best quarterback you can. I know, that's a novel concept. No one has ever thought of that before, right? Oh wait, hang on. That's actually common sense. The reality is that it's not enough to say that Sam Darnold is going to succeed in the Shanahan system. Firstly, the Shanahan system is overrated, and I'll get into that in a minute. But that's like saying that any quarterback who's comfortable in running play-action bootlegs and throwing on the run can succeed in the NFL under anyone that comes from the Mike Shanahan coaching tree. It doesn't work that way. Talent wins over scheme in the NFL. I mean, I prefer Justin Fields, but if you're that gung-ho on picking a quarterback who better fits the Shanahan system, take Zach Wilson. I'd rather you pick Wilson than roll with Darnold. Hell, I'd rather you start my dead grandmother at quarterback than roll with Darnold. I mean, if you believe in the Shanahan system that much, then fine. But take Zach Wilson. Don't tell me that Sam Darnold is going to succeed in this system when I've seen nothing from him in 3 years that tells me he's a franchise quarterback, and couple that with the fact that I saw him run it his first year in the league, and he was garbage. He played well after coming back from the injury, but for the most part, he was absolute garbage. But now on to the notion that the Shanahan offense is fantastic. It's really not. It's not even remotely close. The Shanahans are, without question, the most overrated family in football history. A lot of the legacy comes from the fact that Mike Shanahan won 2 Super Bowls with the Broncos. There's no question that he did. He can wear those rings with pride. I'm not trying to take those rings away from him. He got John Elway over the hump. Give him full credit. You can't take 97 and 98 away from him. But the reality is, this century, the Shanahans have been an unmitigated disaster. After the second Super Bowl, Shanahan only won one playoff game. The 2005 Broncos beat the Patriots 27-13 in the divisional round. That's the only playoff win that Mike Shanahan has in the 21st century. He had some good regular seasons, there's no question, but if the Shanahan offense was this good, you'd win more than one playoff game. Then Shanahan went to the Redskins, mangled RG3, handled his injury as bad as you possibly could, ruined his career. You know who else was a big part of that? Kyle Shanahan. Kirk Cousins, a Pro Bowler, did nothing under Mike Shanahan and Kyle Shanahan. Say what you want about Kirk Cousins, but he's a solid quarterback. Massively overpaid, but still, solid quarterback. Mike Shanahan should have been able to do more with him. He failed. I'll fast forward a little bit. Mike Shanahan is thankfully out of the league. Kyle Shanahan is coaching in the Super Bowl. 28-3 happens. The Falcons' offense goes dry. Shanahan goes to the 49ers. You know, the San Francisco 49ers have only finished with more than 6 wins 1 year since Shanahan's been there. I understand that 1 year they made the Super Bowl. I'm not saying that Kyle Shanahan is a bad coach. But to say that he's in the Bill Belichick, Andy Reid, Sean McVay tier is just wrong. And I don't give a damn about injuries. Again, if this system is so great, it should be able to withstand injuries. There's no question that Jimmy Garoppolo is an injury-prone quarterback. But again, if the Shanahan system is so great, you should do better than 6-10. I'm not killing Mike LaFleur. I'm really not. But I am killing the idea that this system is so great that we need to roll with inferior players to make it work. I do think Zach Wilson is inferior to Justin Fields. Not saying Wilson's bad. Just saying I think Fields is better. And Sam Darnold, forget about it. He may be the worst starting quarterback in the NFL. And if he's not, it's close. But if they do roll with Darnold, which is very possible, what do you do with the second overall pick? Do you trade down? Do you take Penei Sewell? Do you take Devontae Smith? What do you do? I wouldn't take Devontae Smith. It's nothing against Smith. I love Devontae Smith. But there are some really good wide receivers available in free agency. I can find similar production to a guy like Smith. Penei Sewell, I'd be more open to, but Taylor Moton and Darrell Williams are free agents. So it's the same principle. I'd be more amenable to Sewell because an offensive lineman's performance is less dependent on another man's performance like wide receiver is. But I would prefer Sewell to Smith. Nothing against Smith. I'd be okay with Smith. But I prefer Sewell. I feel like I prefer trading down, though. You could get a king's ransom. As we all know, the Jets have a ton of holes. I understand you have gobs and gobs of cap space, but you know what? If Joe Douglas is the great drafter that everyone says he is, I'd rather fill those holes through the draft than with older, more expensive players. There is one more thing I want to say, though, about Sala, more specifically his staff. We know that Mike LaFleur is going to join him as his offensive coordinator. I have no problem with that. I just don't want him to be beholden to a specific system, and a system that I don't think is that good. The best coaches adapt their system to their personnel. But there are obviously more positions on the staff to fill. Here's what I think the Jets could do to fill out some of those positions. I'll start with a couple holdovers, Todd Washington and Hines Ward. Washington was a running backs coach for the Orlando Apollos of the AAF. I understand it's the AAF, a league that no longer exists, but still, he has experience coaching it. This guy's won 2 Super Bowls in his career, was a solid player in the NFL. I'd want to keep him around. Wide receivers coach should be Hines Ward. That's pretty self-explanatory. Yes, Hines Ward actually was an offensive assistant for the Jets last year. Same thing with Washington. Offensive line coach, if possible, I'd like to be John Benton. This guy has been in football since 1987. He's been in the NFL since 2003. You don't last that long without having a good head on your shoulders. I'd like to bring in Benton if possible. I'd like to bring in Johnny Holland to be the linebackers coach. You can make him defensive coordinator also. I'd have no problem with that. Like I said, the guy has a ton of experience. He's been in the NFL almost nonstop since 1987, both as a player and as a coach. Won a Super Bowl, is in the Packers Hall of Fame. Very smart guy. Daniel Bullocks should be the defensive backs coach. This guy's 37 years old and already has almost a decade of coaching experience under his belt. And I remember watching him at Nebraska. He was a good player. Didn't work out in the NFL as a player, but as a coach, seems to have a good head on his shoulders. Bring in as many guys as possible from the Niners to increase Sala's comfortability with his staff. And Michael Clay is the Niners' assistant special teams coach. I'd be lying to you if I said I knew how good the Niners' special teams was. But like I said, give Sala some guys who he knows. All in all, I like this hire by the Jets. I really do. Do I have some questions about it? Yes, I do. And every Jets fan should have questions about this hire. They haven't had a good head coach since Rex Ryan. You know what? That feels like eons ago. I think he'll do a good job. I think LaFleur will do a good job. I just don't want him to be beholden to the Shanahan system. And I do like that Sala is the anti-Gase. That is the right way to go about this. You tried one type of coach, it didn't work, so yes, you're going to go the other way. That's the right thing to do. Although I will say, for whatever it's worth, after the Jets fired Bowles, Gase was the 5th guy on my list. After they fired Gase, Sala was the 5th guy on my list. So if you believe in omens, that's not a good one. But I really think Sala's going to work out. I think it's interesting that he's going to run a 4-3 defense, something I haven't seen the Jets run in a really, really long time as their base defense. You're going to see a lot of cover 3. That will change how Joe Douglas attacks free agency and the draft. They're not going to draft a middle linebacker in the second day anymore. They have Mosley coming back. They only need one middle linebacker. I kind of like it. And I like LaFleur too. I think he has a good head on his shoulders. I just can't go as crazy as some people. I'm naturally jaded when it comes to the Jets. Alright, now it's time to preview this weekend's 4 NFL playoff games. I'm going to go chronologically, so that means I'm going to start with Rams-Packers. If the Rams are going to win this game, they need their defense to put Aaron Rodgers on the ground. Aaron Donald is more than capable of doing that. And they need their offense to step up like it did against the Seahawks. The reality is the Rams defense is gonna get theirs. As great as Rodgers is, the Packers are gonna have some drives where they can't get anything going. Donald, John Johnson, Darius Williams, Sebastian Joseph Day, Jalen Ramsey, Troy Hill, Leonard Floyd. These guys are gonna be able to make plays. In terms of points against per game, the Rams had the best defense in the NFL. They only gave up 18.5 points. They made Russell Wilson look absolutely terrible last week. There is no better coached team in the NFL than the Los Angeles Rams. Brandon Staley pushes his defense to incredible heights, and Sean McVay does the same thing on offense. Jared Goff is going to start to be backed up by Blake Bortles. You gotta think that McVay is gonna rely heavily on Cam Akers, much like he did last week. I mean, give McVay credit. He orchestrated a game plan that put up 30 points. I'll summarize. For the Rams to win this game, they've got to put Aaron Rodgers on the ground, and they've got to execute Sean McVay's offensive game plan. They are going to need to play a well-rounded game to beat this Packers team. This is a great Packers team. They have the best offense in the NFL in terms of points per game. Aaron Rodgers should win MVP. Aaron Jones ran for over 1,100 yards. Devontae Adams is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. If the Packers are going to win this game, they need those 3 guys to step up. I'd also like Marquise Valdes-Scantling to step up. Robert Tonyan also. I don't want the Packers' passing game to be so one-dimensional. It does get that way sometimes. Nothing against LaFleur or Rodgers, but if those other guys get a case of the dropsies, that's what ends up happening. I don't think it's as much on the Packers' defense. It's just going to come down to coaching. Can Mike Pettin counter what Sean McVay tries to do on offense? You know you're going to see a lot of motion. You know you're going to see a lot of runs. Maybe some jet sweeps. How can Pettin counter that? How are guys like Jair Alexander, Adrian Amos, Zadarius Smith, Darnell Savage, and Kenny Clark going to step up? How are they going to be able to make plays? I will say this, though. Kingsley Keke is doubtful for this game with a concussion. He's a very important rotational defensive lineman for the Packers. And Jared Veldheer could have been the first player in NFL history to play for two different teams in the same playoffs, but he's on the COVID-19 list. As much as I love Sean McVay, as much as I love Jared Goff, I just think the Packers are leaps and bounds better. I've got to go with Green Bay in this one. Moving on now to Ravens-Bills. Last week, I keyed in on Lamar Jackson, and Lamar Jackson only, as a key contributor for the Ravens to win this game. I'm not going to do that here. I think Jackson has gotten the monkey off his back a little bit. It's still there, but not as much. Instead, I'm going to key in on the Ravens' defense. A defense that we all know is good. It's always good. It's the Baltimore Ravens. And I'm surprised Don Martindale hasn't gotten more head coaching buzz because of it. Marlon Humphrey, Calais Campbell, Jimmy Smith, Pernell McPhee, Yannick Ngakoue, Justin Matabuki, Tyus Bowser, Chuck Clark, Jalen Ferguson, Brandon Williams, LJ Fort, Deshaun Elliott, and Jihad Ward. The guys who brought the Ravens to the dance on defense are going to need to step up in Buffalo. And it's going to be up to Josh Allen to counter that. It's going to be up to an MVP candidate. I'm not saying he's going to win it. It should be Aaron Rodgers, but he'll get votes. Look, Allen was the only guy offensively who stepped up for the Bills yesterday. I'm not counting the wide receivers. Of course they're going to step up if the quarterback plays well. But Devin Singletary couldn't get much going. Zach Moss couldn't get much going. It was all on Allen to get the ball to guys like Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis, and Cole Beasley. I don't think the Bills' defense is that important in this game. The Bills have had a middle-of-the-pack defense all year. Case in point, what happened last week. They gave up 24 points. Not great, not terrible. I think it's more on Josh Allen to step up again and lead the Bills to victory. He can do it. He does have that ability. There's no question about that. all in all, this was a really hard game for me to make a pick for. I can make the argument that the Ravens are going to win this game. I can make the argument that the Bills are going to win this game. All in all, I really don't want to go chalk. I picked the Ravens to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl before the season started. I want to stick with it. It wouldn't surprise me if the Bills won at all. Like I said, I can make a very easy argument for that. But I am going to pick the Ravens. Moving on now to Browns-Chiefs. For the Browns to win this game, they're going to need to do two things. Number one, execute on offense. Baker Mayfield, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, and Jarvis Landry all showed up last week for the Browns. They beat a really good Steelers team. In fact, they destroyed a really good Steelers team. Don't look at the final score. I promise you, the game wasn't that close. Those guys are going to need to step up again. This much maligned Browns team. A team that no one believed in. Oh, look at what they did last year. They were supposed to be so great. They went 6-10. Baker Mayfield's a bust. They bring in Kevin Stefanski and everything changes. And Stefanski's going to be on the sidelines. And Joel Bitonio's going to come back. Make no mistake about it. The Browns could knock off the Chiefs. This is a scary matchup for the Chiefs. My buddy Nick, big Chiefs fan. He's nervous about this game. You don't want to play the Browns right now. But in addition to showing up on offense, the Browns are going to need to close out this game. They did let the Steelers back in it last week. After going up 35-7, they were outscored 30-13. And the reality is, you're not going to put up 48 points against the Kansas City Chiefs. Their defense is much better than the Steelers' defense. So if you take a lead in this game, and you have that lead in the fourth quarter, you've gotta find a way to close that game out. Especially since Patrick Mahomes, in all 3 playoff games last year, came from behind to win those games. Epic comeback against the Texans, really good comeback against the Titans, good comeback against the 49ers. That actually plays into my key of winning this game for the Chiefs. Get out to a big lead and hold it. To end the season, the Chiefs weren't that impressive. Starting from the Broncos game on, they really disappointed. They should have scored more than 22 against the Broncos. Mahomes was really bad against the Dolphins. Their win against the Saints was more a Breeze loss than it was a Mahomes win. He wasn't that good against the Falcons, and against the Chargers he didn't play. The Chiefs lost. Irrelevant. The Chiefs need to get out to a big lead. And they've got to hold it. I'm not saying it needs to be 28-0, but get out to a 2-score lead and don't relinquish it. I don't think you want Mahomes having to come from behind again. It would be the 5th straight playoff game that he had to do that. Because remember, 2018, he had to do it against the Patriots to force overtime. And even before that, the drive after the Sonny Michel touchdown run, where the Chiefs scored right before the 2-minute warning. And even before that, they were down entering the fourth quarter. You don't want to be in that situation again. And you know what? I don't think the Chiefs will be. I'm not saying the Chiefs are going to have an easy path to victory here, but look, I do think they're the better team. I do think they're going to win this game by double digits. I don't think Mahomes is going to have to sweat too much. Maybe he will a little bit. I think the Browns will keep it close. But I do think the Chiefs are going to win. The last game to talk about is the battle of two future Hall of Famers, Buccaneers-Saints. This is what everybody wanted with Brady leaving New England for the Buccaneers. They wanted to see Brady versus Breeze. That's why it was scheduled for week 1. And now we get to see it in the playoffs. You couldn't script it much better. Make no mistake about it, this is an important game for Brady. He's got to go pretty far in the playoffs if he wants to show that he really can win without Belichick. Just a win over Taylor Heineke, that doesn't prove that. Brady needs to win this game to help his legacy. His legacy doesn't need much help, but it needs a sliver of help. But I don't think Brady's the key to winning this game for the Buccaneers. The key is their defense. Todd Bowles, the great defensive coordinator, the guy who's getting head coaching interviews. Meanwhile, Taylor Heineke throws for over 300 yards. He's responsible for 2 touchdowns. Pro Football Focus loved him. You let Cam Sims get 7 catches for 104 yards. 3 Washington receivers had over 70 receiving yards last week. Sims, Terry McLaurin, and Logan Thomas. Can you stop Alvin Kamara? Can you stop Emmanuel Sanders? Can you stop Michael Thomas? If the Buccaneers are going to win this game, they've got to limit those guys. It's just that simple. Bowles needs to call a smart game, and he needs Levante David, Jamel Dean, Shaq Barrett, Carlton Davis, JPP, Jordan Whitehead, and Antoine Winfield to keep up their great play. I know that JPP is questionable, but I'd be surprised if he didn't play. As for the Saints, if they're going to win this game, they need Breeze to step up. This is probably going to be Breeze's last year. It's his second straight year missing at least 4 games. It's his second straight year that he's thrown for under 3,000 yards. I think he's done. I think he's looking forward to going to NBC. If you watch him play, you just don't see the same Drew Brees that you saw when he was throwing for over 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns. He is a future Hall of Famer, there's no question about that. One of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. I'm not trying to take anything away from him, and it's his birthday today. So happy birthday, Mr. Breeze. But the reality is, you've got to step up if you want to lead the Saints to victory here. All in all, in watching Buccaneers Washington and Bears Saints last week, I was more impressed with Brady than I was Breeze. I was really impressed with Leonard Fournette. I was really impressed with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown, Cameron Brate. I think the Buccaneers have more talent. I think they have the better quarterback right now. For all those reasons, I gotta go with the Buccaneers. There are some more NFL hires to break down. And I'll start with the Falcons offering their head coaching job to Arthur Smith, according to Diana Rossini of ESPN. If you've listened to this show for a while, you know that I'm a big Arthur Smith fan. I love what he's done with Tannehill. I love what he's done with Derrick Henry. I love what he's done with Corey Davis. I love what he's done with A.J. Brown. I love what he's done with Jonnu Smith. I think Arthur Smith is one of the greatest offensive minds in the NFL today. I would have put him on my A1 list for the Jets, but this goes back to my anti-Gase point. Smith is getting this job partially because of what he did to Ryan Tannehill. Adam Gase got the Jets job partially because of a Peyton Manning phone call, but also because of what he did with Ryan Tannehill. Distance yourself as far away from Gase as possible. But I do like Arthur Smith. I think he's going to do a really good job at the Falcons. Young, offensive guru. This does signal to me that the Falcons are preparing for the next era beyond Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. The reality is, both of those guys are on the wrong side of 30. If you were going to try to make one more go with them, I feel like you'd go with a defensive guy. Because the defense needs more help than an offense led by Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. I do think the Falcons are preparing for the future. It wouldn't surprise me if they took a quarterback high in this coming NFL draft. I think Smith is the perfect guy to span these two eras of Falcons football, the end of the Matt Ryan era and the start of the next era. This is a great hire by the Falcons. Moving on now to Dan Campbell, emerging as the favorite to be the new head coach of the Lions. That is according to Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network. And I'm not crazy about this hire. There were better candidates available. Eric Bieniemy, Marvin Lewis, Brian Daboll, who they didn't even interview, Matt Eberflus, who they didn't even interview, Brandon Staley, who they didn't even interview. I mean, I'll say this, you look at the guys who the Lions were linked to for their next head coach, it's not an impressive list. I'm not pinning that on Brad Holmes. He just got there. This isn't his hire. This is a hire from the Fords. So you have the arranged marriage, which never ends well. And the reality is, Campbell really isn't that good. He was the interim coach of the Dolphins in 2015. They went 5-7. Whoop-de-doo. After that, he went to the Saints as their assistant head coach / tight ends coach. I don't feel comfortable giving a head coaching job to a tight ends coach. I don't care that he has 12 games of head coaching experience under his belt in 2015. That means nothing to me. You've got to be a coordinator or a college football head coach for me to get behind your candidacy. Hell, I'm not crazy about Joe Brady getting all this head coaching buzz. You could talk me into Brady being a better head coaching candidate than Campbell. I mean, I understand that the Saints have had good tight ends under Campbell. Ben Watson, Kobe Fleener, and Jared Cook have all produced under him. But how much of that is really on Campbell versus a guy like Sean Payton or Pete Carmichael or Drew Brees? We're talking about a position coach. I'm not saying position coaches aren't important, but they shouldn't become head coaches. You've got to work your way up the chain the right way. Campbell hasn't done that. This is not going to end well for the Lions. I promise you. The last NFL story to talk about is the Panthers hiring Scott Fitterer away from the Seahawks to be their new GM. Fitterer was previously the Seahawks Vice President of Football Operations. The Panthers were the only team that he interviewed with this cycle, but he has gotten GM interviews previously. He is a smart guy. He's been with the Seahawks since 2001. He's been working directly under John Schneider since 2010. We all know how great the Seahawks have been recently. I think Fitterer has a really good head on his shoulders. The one thing I'm not crazy about is the lack of a Matt Rule connection. The Panthers need to be able to marry Rule and Fitterer. To do that, they needed a guy with a previous relationship to Rule. Fitterer doesn't have that. The Panthers are stuck with Rule. They gave him a big contract. That's not to say Rule isn't going to do a good job down the line, but the Panthers have a lot invested in him. I think Fitterer is a smart guy. I think he's going to do a good job, but I worry about his lack of a connection to Matt Rule. Truthfully, I thought Jerry Reese would have made more sense. I like this hire for the Panthers. I don't love it. Alright, now I'll give you some MLB Valk talk. And you know I have to start this off with the Yankees finally bringing back DJ LeMahieu. The long negotiation is over. LeMahieu is going to sign a 6-year contract worth $90 million. That is $15 million a year. It gives the Yankees extra flexibility to add about $14-15 million to their payroll and stay under the luxury tax. You gotta love this move. The Yankees had to bring LeMahieu back. There was no way around it. This guy has been fantastic ever since he's been a Yankee. He's hit over 300 both years, won the batting title last year, fantastic with runners in scoring position. You can't say enough nice things about him. DJ LeMahieu is going to go down as one of the greatest free agent signings in Yankees history, if not baseball history. It was imperative for the Yankees to bring him back. They didn't have another choice. Who else did you want? Didi Gregorius? Andrelton Simmons? None of those guys can hold a candle to LeMahieu. 6 years may be a little surprising. The Yankees are going to have him through his age 38 season. But you cross that bridge when you get there. And even though this wasn't the primary motivation for the Yankees going 6 years, it is a nice, for lack of a better term, severance package for him. Because this was going to be his last big boy contract. In fact, for a player of LeMahieu's standards, he really hasn't made a lot of money. Counting this contract, he's made just over $130 million. Now that's a lot of money, I'm not saying it's not, but when you compare it to his production, he's been underpaid for a long time. He was underpaid with the Yankees. I mean, $15 million a year isn't a big raise from the $12 million he made last year and the year before, but he gets it for 6 years. He gets $90 million. That's more money he's ever seen in his life. He deserves it. He's going to continue to do great things with the Yankees. Like I said, the Yankees had to bring him back. Was it touch and go there for a little bit? Yes, it was. But the Yankees got their guy. That's all that matters. Now, Cashman can focus on reinforcing the rotation. Moving on now to the Phillies, signing Archie Bradley to a 1-year deal worth $6 million. And this makes perfect sense for the Phillies. They had a garbage bullpen last year. The seminal reason why they didn't make the playoffs last year. Their only good relievers were Tommy Hunter and Blake Parker. That's it. Should this be it for the Phillies in terms of reinforcing their bullpen? No. But this is a good get for him. Bradley is a really good reliever. He's been a reliever ever since he left the Diamondbacks rotation in 2017. From 2017 on, he has a 2.95 ERA. Now, he's never been the full-time closer. And I'd expect him to be the Phillies' full-time closer if they don't make any more moves. Now, Bradley can fill that role. This is a good get for the Phillies. It really is. But they've got to do more to reinforce the bullpen. Moving on now to the Giants, signing Alex Wood to a 1-year deal worth $3 million. And at first glance, this doesn't make a lot of sense. You take a look at what Wood did the last 2 years. He's only started 9 games. He's gone 1-4 with a 5.96 ERA in that time span. But the Giants made it known that they wanted to add at least one lefty starter. And Wood has had success in the majors before. In 2017, he was an all-star. Went 16-3 with a 2.72 ERA. He had an 8.42 winning percentage. That led the majors. The year after that, 9-7 with a 3.68 ERA. Look, I'm not crazy about his win-loss record, but he has a career 3.45 ERA. It should be higher, there's no question, but Wood is going to be able to give the Giants a solid lefty starter, provided he can stay healthy. It's a big assumption, but even if he can't, it's not a big contract. $3 million. This makes perfect sense for the Giants. The last story to talk about is the Angels signing Kurt Suzuki to a 1-year deal worth $1.5 million. And this is a really good move for the Angels. You can't say enough good things about this move. The Angels had a big hole at catcher prior to this signing. Max Stassi, while he had a good year last year, has shown nothing prior to last year's farce of a season that he can carry the load at catcher. He had been completely garbage up until last year. Moreover, you're probably not going to see him until late April, early May-ish. He had surgery to repair a torn labrum in his left hip in September. Besides him, the Angels had Anthony Bemboom and Juan Gratterall as their catchers. Neither one of those guys are any good. Suzuki has been a really good catcher in this league for a long time. He's going to give you a solid average, 260-ish, little bit of pop. You can expect 10 to 15 homers. He drives runners in at a solid clip, though. He'll get like 60 RBIs, maybe more, hitting behind guys like Trout and Pujols and Adele and Ohtani. This makes perfect sense for the Angels. Suzuki has been an incredibly underrated player in this league for a long time. He knows how to win. He won a World Series in 2019 with the Nationals. Truthfully, I think this is one of the best signings of the offseason so far. Brooklyn Nets show comes your way on Monday evening. Regular episode of the Jacob Valk Show comes your way every weekday afternoon. Until then, I am Jacob Valk saying, Happy birthday, Dad!